Wake up and all your memories mud. You down a coffee in the lobby just to shake it all off. All the cool cats from the alley seem to rally back out.
Welcome in, Day Oneers, to the Day One Football Podcast. This is episode 21. Hey, Mike. What's 9 plus 10?
21.
Thank you for that outdated joke. I'm with Mike, Day One Big Mike, and the Day One Papa, Stephen King. And we're going to talk some fantasy football as always. And we got a big jam-packed show. We got some A1 news. We have the Have the Day segment. We got the three buys, low sells, and drops, and we're gonna finish up with waiver wire. So without further ado, actually, let's not jump into that right away. Mike, how are you today?
I'm great. I went 4-0 this week. That puts my overall record to 12-4. I made an unreal trade as per usual in that dynasty league. Don't really know what's going on with those guys, but had one angry manager. Steve, how are you doing?
Just out here living the dream. Had a couple really big fantasy wins this week. I think I went 3-2 in my leagues. Not looking good in my one dynasty. Looks like it could be a rebuild year for me. But the other leagues, I'm looking competitive. I don't like to win off of injuries, but I played against Nick Chubb a little bit in 3 different leagues. So that's good for me, but sucks for Colin. Colin, bring us in with the injuries here.
Yeah, so off the top, we have Austin Eckler. He got a hamstring injury. Mike, can you throw us the details?
Yeah, so it was known as a grade 2 hamstring strain. Basically, he'll be out probably a month. Could probably be about 6 weeks till he's back to regular Austin Eckler. But in the meantime, go with Josh Kelly. Steve, you got anything to add?
I do like the Josh Kelly pickup. But you also have to remember that they do use 2 backs. So if Justin Jackson starts rolling, you might see him get some more snaps than Kelly. I think it depends on who's playing better. They're just going to go with the hot hand there. But for now, right now, it's going to be Josh Kelly. Colin?
Yeah, without a doubt. It's gonna be interesting to see how that backfield plays out now. This one hurts me to my core. So my favorite player is Nick Chubb, and he got hurt. His ankle got rolled up, and he has an MCL injury, and he's placed on the IR. They're saying he should be back around week 9, and that's good news. But it was very upsetting for me to watch him get hurt. But the positive side was the Browns won their game, and they have 3 running backs apparently that can just run all over the Cowboys defense. So it was fun to watch. But Kareem Hunt's easily going to be a top 10 fantasy running back now. Mike, any thoughts?
It looked a lot worse than it was. An MCL, I think it's a strain or something. Was probably the best case scenario. You didn't really want to see an ACL injury because with a running back, it's a lot of shifting, and that is primarily the ACL. So best case scenario, I mean, it sucks, but Nick Chubb will be Nick Chubb. He'll still come back and he'll be fine. Steve, what are you saying?
I'm actually, as much as Colin said, Kareem Hunt's going to be a top 10 guy, and he definitely has the opportunity in front of him. But the way that they ran the offense, now I don't know if it's because the score was kind of outrageous, or if Hunt was dealing with a groin injury before the game. But Hunt only played 34% of the snaps, and he only had 11 rushing attempts with no targets. So I think it's just the way they run their offense, but it could be the injury as well. I'm a little concerned. The other backs both looked really good. As Colin, who is the next guy up after Chubb went down?
Ernest Johnson, and then they had Dontrell Hillard as well.
Hillard looked really good when I was watching him. I don't know, he just looked quick. I can't bring up
That's
his
what he
stats
is.
or anything.
That's what
But
he
he
is.
looked
He's just quick.
he looked quick. So I'm not banking on Hunt to be a top 10. I'm not going to trade for him to be a top 10 guy because of what I saw last game. 34% of snaps with Chubb not playing most and no receptions. So it does kind of worry me. But Colin?
Yeah, so just off that, he was dealing with a little bit of a groin injury, which is why he wasn't out there a lot, unless he was around goal line work. Dontrell Hillard, I mean, he didn't look that great, Steven. He had 5 carries for 19 yards, 3.8 yards a carry. But he is explosive, and he's not going to be used much. He's more of a punt returner / like kick returner type of guy. The interesting one, I think, is actually going to be Ernest Johnson, and we're going to touch on him later in the podcast when it goes to waiver wire, so we'll leave it for now. So let's move on to the next guy on the list, which is Mr. Sam Darnold. He has an AC joint injury that happened when he got hit in the Thursday night game against the Broncos. He did come back and play the rest of the game, but he apparently will be not starting this Sunday per Adam Gase, so he really wants to get fired. Mike, any thoughts?
It came out that Sam Darnold does want to play, but I mean, an AC joint in a throwing shoulder is really not great for a quarterback. It's really caused a lot of pain. I mean, he came back and played through it. You can play through it, but he's definitely going to suffer. Steve, what are you thinking?
I wasn't going to start Darnold. I wasn't going to roster Darnold, and I'm not going to start his backup, Joe Flacco, who is still elite in my eyes from his Bronco days. But no, I feel bad because I like Darnold. He broke off a pretty big run against the Broncos, so I really didn't like him during that game. But he came back and ended up losing, so I was happy. Don't start Darnold if he's playing. Don't start Darnold any time this year until you see that offense get a little better. So, Colin?
Yep. So next on the list is OJ Howard. He apparently has a Achilles injury. He's placed on IR. He's done for the year. I don't know if this was a torn Achilles. They didn't really specify. But yeah, he's out after looking pretty decent for a few weeks there with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Mike, any thoughts?
I mean, he finally actually did something, and then he goes down. So, story of the Bucs. There was also another injury. Mike Evans looked really, really hurt with that foot injury. It'll probably be another week of non-practice, and then there is concerns because they do play Thursday against the Bears. So, I mean, keep an eye and make sure to have him in a wide receiver, not a flex, in case he doesn't play and you need to start someone else. But Steve, what are you thinking with OJ Howard and Mike Evans?
So it was a ruptured Achilles, Colin. That's the report that I saw. And I just wanted to point out pass catchers for the Bucs are dropping. Mike Evans, if he doesn't play, Chris Godwin is still questionable. Scotty Miller is questionable. Justin Watson is questionable. That leaves Gronk and Cameron Brate. Honestly, I think Cameron Brate could be a huge start. You saw what he can do the past couple of years when he gets the opportunity, and he's a red zone threat too. So I think Cameron Brate would be a good pickup. We're not going to bring him up during the waiver wire segment, but just keep that in the back of your mind. Cameron Brate could be a big pickup this week. Colin?
Yeah. So next, Sorry, my document actually closed on me. This is awkward. Mike
Next
Evans. Oh, we guess we already touched on him. So Sony's Michelle has a quad injury. We saw what Damian Harris could do yesterday. He put up over 100 rushing yards on like 17 attempts. So yeah, basically just Sony Michel is injured. I don't know what else to really say about him. Mike.
He's on the IR.
Yeah, what else is new? Just Steve.
Yeah, he got placed on the IR, so he's gone for at least 3 games, as per this year's IR. So Damian Harris, Burkhead, James White. Who knows what's going to happen? If I were to guess right now, I'm starting Harris over Burkhead, and I'm probably starting White over both. So that's my go-to in that backfield. If you want to play some roulette there, Colin.
Yep, and then the last one is my butthole. Steven took me to the back of the shed house and just bent me over, put up over 200 points on me this past week in our Dynasty League. So my butthole is apparently on the IR. I think Mike wrote this in. Maybe Steven.
That would be Steven, not me.
Well, Mike was chirping me last week because he said that my pride was hurt. So I decided to flip it around and put it on our host this week.
Well, I probably deserve it. Who won your DraftKings this week?
That would be me.
Mike won by less than a half a point. I think it was like 0.2 or 0.3. I honestly, it was so close, and I was winning the whole time. I don't even know what he did to get. I don't know what
it was. I will bring it up in the A1 news part. So,
big A1 news.
Football news.
Okay, so let's move on. First one on the list is Texans fire head coach, offensive coordinator, and GM Bill O'Brien. Romeo Cornell will be the defensive coordinator, will be the interim head coach. So basically, they finally broke ties with this guy after 7 years. And that team is just mangled. So who knows what's going to happen the rest of the season with them. Mike, what's your opinion on the Texans?
Thank God they got him out of there. Thank God. I mean, it sucks because their picks absolutely stink. But, I mean, he was the worst part of that team. Why they had him as head coach, offense coordinator, GM, probably scout, he probably did the cafeteria duties too, like just trying to do absolutely everything and stinking at all of it. I really hope they bring in I've seen some rumors where they're looking at a couple college head coaches. The one from Oklahoma, I can't remember his name. But he's a quarterback factory. And just to bring it up with the DraftKings, I beat Steve by 0.26 points. So I don't know how I did it, but a big $1.80 goes to me. And Steve, what are you saying with the Texans finally getting rid of the worst coach on the planet?
I don't know. I don't. For football in general, I think it's good. I think the Texans are going to be a better club in the next little while. I don't know how they're going to do the rest of this year. I had them actually having a pretty good year. I don't think that's going to happen now. I think their team's going to be in shambles pretty much for the rest of this year at least. And then when they kind of figure things out for next season, who knows, honestly. You have a 28-year-old running back who obviously doesn't have the burst anymore. You got rid of a top 3 wide receiver in the world this past offseason. Now, Will Fuller looks good. Watson is still phenomenal, but there's so many broken pieces in this team, and it's going to be hard to fix. But who knows? Who knows for fantasy is going to be a lot different than the way that the team runs. So we'll see how it goes. Colin?
Yep. So next we got Brian Florians. We'll start Ryan Fitzpatrick in week 5, or he's projected to.
Did you put an N in his name? Did you put an N in his name?
I think he combined the Florida coaches with Brian Florians as in Flores and Arians, but
Ryan Flores?
Flores.
Flores?
Yeah,
Flores. What did I say?
you said Florians.
Florians, sorry.
Don't know, but
Arians, yeah.
yeah. Continue. Don't. Or was that?
Is it time for Tua? I don't know. Ryan looked really good. I don't think you can really blame it on Ryan so far, but Mike, any thoughts?
It is time for Tua. I'm pretty sure Fitzpatrick had let's see. He had a good fantasy week, but he went 29 for 45 for 315 yards, but 2 interceptions and 0 touchdowns. Like, he did run one in, but he just looked bad. He said Tua can do so many things that he cannot do, and I think the world deserves to see it. I mean, I'm a little selfish because I am a Tua owner, but I mean, Fitzpatrick, his time's up. It's Tua time. Steve?
Yeah, I want to see Tua just for the hype, but I think there might be more things behind the scenes that we don't really know. Maybe Tua isn't fully healthy. I know he was dealing with some major injury problems prior to the draft, and obviously they say that he's healthy and stuff, but we don't actually know. There's a lot of closed doors that fans don't get to see. So Fitz does not look good, other than somehow he always gets that extra 6 yards for a first down. Like, he's just a monster, just rushing for a first down. I don't know what it is. He can't throw the ball very well, but with his legs, he looks good other than him throwing the ball. So I think Tua will come out this year at some point. I don't know when, but yeah, just get Fitz off the field, please, Colin.
So the next thing on the list is Mohamed Sanu is getting released by the 49ers due to young guns. Well, I guess I put guys, but guns coming back. So like Debo is like officially going to be back this week. I don't know if he really played this Sunday. I don't know if he was active. I actually didn't look into that, but he'll be back for sure this Sunday if he hasn't. Ayuk looks really good. He hurdled a guy for a TD. So with that news of Debo coming back, they're releasing Sanu. I don't think he was really going to be fantasy relevant. I don't think he was actually going to really play much. But it just shows that they're looking forward and they have promise in their wide receiver core now, and they don't really need that veteran presence. Mike?
Yeah, Debo came back and played 34% of the snaps. So obviously they're going to ease him back into it. He had 3 catches on 3 targets for 35 yards, which, I mean, with the quarterback situation is kind of a miracle. And he did have a rush for 10 yards. So he looked really good, which is surprising coming off of a Jones fracture. But, I mean, Mohamed Sanu stinks. We knew that. We knew he wasn't going to be fantasy relevant. So, Steve, you got anything to say?
No, I agree. Sanu was just on the team for depth, and he wasn't really helpful at the time. I mean, would you rather have Sanu or Dante Pettis at this point for your fantasy football team?
Dante Pettis season, baby.
You know, he played 71% of snaps in game 1.
Oh, God.
1 target, 0 receptions.
That's like JJ Arcega-Whiteside, where they said he's going to have a huge role and he gets 0 targets, 0 catches, but is on the field the entire time.
We can move on from Sanu. Yeah. Nobody wants to hear him.
Okay. So last point on the football news is Cam Akers to return week 5 after that rib injury that affected him, I think, week 2 or week 3. Steven, your guy's coming back. How do you feel?
Honestly, this backfield is crazy because Henderson goes off a week, and then we think he's going to be the starter. And then what happens last week or this past
retires.
Week? We have Malcolm Brown, who just absolutely pops off. So honestly, I have no idea what to do with this backfield. I'm still a believer in Akers because I like the talent and I like the future. So if we were talking dynasty, I really like Cam Akers. if we're talking redraft, I don't even know if he's worth a roster spot until we actually see what happens. So we'll see. Mike?
Not only does Steve get Akers back, but there was a notification that came to my phone that said that Philip Lindsay will be coming back this week as well.
Woo!
So just a great week for Steve. It's only a matter of time till someone else that he loves gets injured, because he has the curse of death this year. But I still have Akers rostered just because my team was good, so I didn't really need anyone else. But humble brag. But honestly, I hope he takes it and runs with it. If Darrell Henderson can do it, I think Akers can do it. So, Colin, what are you saying here?
I think it's Henderson's season still. I think Akers. I don't know if I can really trust Akers or White, just because we've seen what we have with like running backs that are rookies so far. Besides Elaire and Jonathan Taylor, you don't really know what you're going to get. And from what the brief amount of touches that we've seen of Akers, he hasn't looked really that great. So it'll be interesting to see how they utilize him moving forward. You guys ready to move on to Have a Day segment?
Yeah.
All right, so it's time for the Have a Day segment, and we're going to jump into that QBs right away. So number 1, Mr. Dak Prescott. Number 2, Tom Brady. Number 3, Aaron Rodgers. 4, Teddy Bridgewater. There's not a 5 for some reason. Looks like it got mangled a bit. Oh, there we go. Lamar Jackson, number 5. Josh Allen, number 6. 7, Justin Herbert. Number 8, Sam Darnold. 9, Matt Stafford. And 10, Fitzmagic. Mike, you want to jump in first?
For all the fans out there, I was testing if he would read directly from the doc, and it is true. He will read whatever you type there. But I will go with let's see. I'll go with Justin Herbert out there in Los Angeles. He had a phenomenal game. He passed the ball at 80% for 290 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. It's a wonder how I believe they actually lost that game. Yeah, they lost it to Tom Brady. I mean, that guy threw 5 touchdowns. That's ridiculous. But he also rushed the ball. He had 5 rushes for 14 yards. I don't see how they put Tyrod back in. I know they should, because it was the team issue that they put him out. But I mean, this kid is absolutely balling out. I was down on him throughout the draft process. I thought he was a Jekyll and Hyde quarterback, much like Mitch Trubisky, but I mean, he's looking good. It was a tough defense. Yeah, Steve, your guy.
Okay, so I'm gonna go with the number 1 guy on the board here, and I think that it's ridiculous what he's doing this year. I just wanted to point out that he's on pace for like 6,700 yards through the air, which would break the record by over 1,000. Is that insane to think? Okay, so Dak's been popping off. His wide receivers, when we get to them, there's 2 of them in the top 4, which is insane. Now, a lot of this is because Dallas's defense has been insanely bad, but Dak looks so good passing the ball right now. He isn't rushing as much as he normally does. I'm pretty sure he still has 3 rushing TDs this year, which is on pace for more than any season he's had yet. But he's been having a decent year. 9 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and like I said, just dominating the yards right now because they're playing catch up so much. So yeah, Dak, I own him in 2 dynasty leagues. So let's go, Colin.
I'm gonna take Aaron Rodgers because I think he's back. I think he had a down year. Everyone was like clowning him and like saying like, oh, he shouldn't be even drafted in top 10 for like fantasy. And he's just been a stud. So yeah, I'm really in on Aaron Rodgers. I think he still has a lot in the tank and he's showing it. And you know what? For having no wide receivers, really, he's been balling out. 4 touchdowns this past week, 0 interceptions, 81% completion rate at 327 yards. So he's going to keep throwing and chucking. And I think the Packers are going to continue to be a good team, even without Devontae Adams there or Lazard or who else is a weapon that they have that's probably not like that's it. Like they take away those top 2 options and he's still figuring it out. So yeah, I'm all in on Aaron Rodgers. So moving on to the running back situation. Number 1, the comeback kid, Mr. Joe Mixon.
Let's
Out
go.
of nowhere.
Hey!
Out of nowhere, finally does something. Number 2, Dalvin Cook. 3, Melvin Gordon. Number 4, Chris Carson. Number 5, Antonio Gibson. Number 6, Latavius Murray. Number 7, Aaron Jones. Number 8, Mike Davis. Number 9, Alvin Kamara. And number 10, Jerick McKinnon. Mike, without further ado, you start.
I'm gonna throw it off to Steve for his boy.
My boy Joe Mixon. And Colin, last episode you were giving us a hard time about Joe Mixon and how bad he's been this year, and I think he heard you because he went off. And now it is Jacksonville, so you know it. We'll just say it's Jacksonville. But Joe Mixon looked phenomenal. He looked good through the air, 30 yards through the air, 6 receptions and a TD. 151 yards on the ground. Now, whoever put this in the doc, they clearly didn't have the right yards per carry. It's listed here at 3.6.
Yeah.
Pretty sure it was at 6 yards a carry.
I might have switched those around.
6.3.
I think it's just 6.
I don't know. Yeah, probably.
Good effort, Mike. But he looked phenomenal. Colin, I just want you to think that Joe Mixon put up that many points in 1 week, and Nick Chubb got hurt at the same time. So how do you feel?
I'm dead. I'm dead inside. No,
So
honestly, like, good for Mixon. Like, I think everyone kind of just like were low on him, and you kept saying buy high, and I kept saying nah, I wouldn't even touch him now. And then he blows up, but he has some tough matchups coming up. He plays the Steelers, I'm pretty sure, in like 2 weeks, in the Colts. So it's not like a great. I don't think it's Steelers. It's someone like that though. But I know it's the Colts for sure. Baltimore. So it's kind of tough. But he definitely came out and he said, "What's poppin'?" and just blew up for once. So good for Joe Mixon to be at number 1 there.
But before we move on from Joe Mixon, Colin, do you see Joe Mixon? So you were talking Montgomery for Mixon straight up earlier. I'm pretty sure that got brought up.
I don't think I said that, but
No, it was for I forget who it was for.
it definitely wasn't Mixon. But
okay, well,
continue.
where do you value Mixon now? Like he has one really big blow up game. Obviously, he's not going to be a top 5. We already know that his offense isn't that great. So he had a blow up game, but it doesn't mean much. Do you see him as a top 10 guy now at least? Because I know you didn't for a little while.
No, I still see him around like top 15. I don't know if he squeezes in that top 10, but if he keeps having weeks like this, I think it could easily happen. The biggest thing with him is his touches in the passing game, and you saw it this week with 6 receptions. Hopefully, Joey B actually starts using him more in that and more efficiently, because there was even like Saturday they were saying that he wasn't even going to play, and then he comes in and dominated because everyone's picking up Gio, thinking like Gio's Gio week, but it wasn't. So yeah, I wouldn't put him in top 10 necessarily, but I think if he continues to have weeks like this, like easily he's a top 10 guy. I just don't know what you saw recently with the 2.7 yards a carry. He's getting the attempts, which is good, but he hasn't blown up like this. So if he can continue to do this against teams, but he has some pretty tough matchups, it's going to be kind of hard for him to continue this output.
Yeah, I think he is definitely a sell high if you can get a Zeke or somebody along Kamara. But obviously it's not going to be straight up. You'd have to trade a piece with it. But after a game like that, I think you try to sell for a top 5 guy. Mike?
Yeah, I agree. But I'm going to go into my guy, if that's all right. And I will go with Chris Carson. I really don't see how Chris Carson isn't a top 10 guy by the end of the season. He could even, with all the injuries and all the variants in the season, I could even see him sneaking up into that top 5 with he's had huge weeks, and I with letting Russ cook, I see him keep just basically keeping it moving. He had 16 rushes for 80 yards, 5 yards a carry, and scored his first 2 rushing touchdowns of the year, which is crazy because I think he's only scored through the air, which if you said that last year, people would look at you like you're insane. They're like, Chris Carson doesn't catch the ball, but he got another 3 receptions this week, and I see him continuing on. I really don't see Carlos Hyde coming into play. I don't see Rashad Penny coming into play, or DJ Dallas for now. But Colin, do you want to go on to your guy?
Yeah, I'll jump on to Antonio Gibson here. So I think we finally witnessed the breakout of him. And, the past 3 weeks, he has put up a touchdown at least once a week. So that's good. But they're playing a really tough matchup in the Baltimore Ravens this past week. He only contributed to 3.5 yards a carry on 13 attempts, though. So he had like a good amount of work. Got a touchdown on the ground with that. But the biggest thing was he caught 4 passes on 5 targets for 82 yards. And I think if he can do that against one of the best, defenses in the league, I think he can easily continue to produce. And if you look at what he has going forward, he has the Rams next. So that's going to be kind of a pretty difficult matchup, but I think he can still figure it out. The Giants, which is a top 5 defense, surprisingly. Then Dallas. So Dallas, will be a must play week. Then he has the bye week. Then he has the Giants, the Detroit, Cincy, Dallas again. So I think there's definitely some relevant weeks there. And just going off of like what he did against like Cleveland has a very good run defense. He did show a little bit of promise. He had a touchdown as well. So if you continue to do that against some of these matchups like the Rams and the Giants, I don't think there's any issue there. Just, he's finally emerged, I think, and I think they're confident by using him game in and game out. So I think I'd definitely be on the Antonio Gibson train now.
All right.
So let's move on to the wide receivers. So number 1, OBJ, my boy, he had a popping game too. Amari Cooper, number 2, DJ Chark, CD Lamb, 4 Adam Thielen. 5 Adam Thielen. 6 Mike Evans, 7 Tim Patrick, 8 Will Fuller, 9 A-Rob, 10 Traquan Smith. Mike.
Well, this is just gonna be a homer segment because I'm pretty sure I know who Steve's going with. I'm pretty sure I know who Colin's going with. So might as well just stick with Allen Robinson. Just a great game from him. An absolute garbage game from the quarterbacks. I'm back on the Mitch train. I think that they should start Mitch instead of Nick Foles this next game because at least the offense actually moved with Nick Foles. It was against the Colts, and their defense is great, but he just looked awful out there. It was not great. It was good when they were playing prevent defense, which is basically where Nick Foles got the bulk of his yards. But it was a Big Ten game out there. It was just punt, 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 punt. So I'll pass it off to Steve to talk about Tim Patrick.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I didn't watch too much of the Bears game, but when I was watching it, Allen Robinson really didn't look that good until like the fourth quarter. And that's when, you saw Allen Robinson be the best player in the game. So it's going to be tough, and it sucks for him that he has to deal with 2 bad QBs. So I feel bad for you, Mike.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're going to go on to Tim Patrick here. 6 receptions, 113 yards, and a touchdown. Just absolutely dominant with ripping him the ball. So don't expect this too much this year. He played against the Jets. So that's all I have to say about that. I think he's still a good waiver wire ad to throw into your flex if you're desperate, if you have guys that get injured. He has New England next game. That might not be a great start, but I think they're going to cover Judy. I think they still see Judy as the one. So I think that's why you see Patrick get open so much. And then he has Miami, and I think Miami could be a big game for him. So if you're going to grab Patrick, I say sit him first game against New England, see how he does, and if he shows some more promise, play him against Miami, no doubt. Colin?
Yeah, so I'm gonna pick. Ooh, should I just do OBJ? I really don't want to. I'm gonna talk on him later.
Chark.
Chark week. No, I'll talk CD Lamb.
Oh, baby.
So CD Lamb against my Browns looked amazing. 5 receptions, 79 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had also an attempt on the ground for 3 yards. What can you? I honestly you look at what Dak's been just doing. I think we talked on Dak last segment. I think Mike was the one that talked on Dak. So
wow,
yeah,
wow, it was Steven.
Wow.
Oh, sorry, I have a small brain apparently. Short memory. So just talking on what Dak does, he's been balling out week in, week out. That defense can't stop anything, so every game's been a shootout for the Cowboys. And I think with that, CeeDee Lamb has been coming into his own. He looks really dominant when he's out there. You can just tell with his route running and his ability to get open for some catches, as he got wide open for the 1 touchdown. And Amari Cooper, he had 12 receptions as well for 134 yards, and he was the second wide receiver on the week. But I think CD's just turned into that wide receiver too easily, and I think he's going to continue to produce and potentially have top 10 weeks here and there. So I expect him to be the wide receiver 1 on that team at the end of the season. And I think he becomes a top option over Cooper at some point. So it'll be interesting to see how the season continues to play out. But CD's looked really good through the first few weeks here, and I'm very surprised with how dominant he's looked. So, and also here's just a question for both of you guys. Do you guys drop Gallup? For how much Dak's been throwing the ball, Gallup's caught 2 passes this week. He's been basically irrelevant. He's throwing to Dalton Schultz over him and stuff like that. Even the backup tight end Ball or Bud or whatever, he's been catching balls too. So it's what's going on with Gallup?
I would drop him. Yes, I just think that CD's already usurped his place and he's already taking over. But Steve, what are you thinking with Gallup here?
I think you guys are ridiculous if you're dropping a top 30 wide receiver right now in fantasy. He's still a top 30 guy. Now,
I think it's from one big game, right?
Well, it depends. He had an 8-point game, a 7-point game, and then a 25. 8. If you're getting 8 from a guy, you're not happy, but it's not a disappointment, right? So, if you this past game was not a good game for him, of course. But like you said, he's been thrown to everybody else. That doesn't mean that Gallup won't have his games. I still believe in Gallup. I think that he's still going to be a top 30 guy come end of season. I love CeeDee Lamb, but I don't think you're going to see CD as the number 1. I think you're going to see the targets spread out a little bit more between the 3 later on. I don't think you're going to see Amari Cooper with 12 receptions most games. So, Colin?
Yeah. So let's move on to the tight end section. Number 1, George Kittle. Number 2, Robert Tonyan. Number 3, Mark Andrews. Number 4, Dalton Schultz. Number 5, OJ Howard. I guess we really can't talk on OJ, but he's there at number 5. Mike, who are you picking?
Andrews must have listened to the pod and heard I caught a couple TDs in Cirque football and decided to match that. But this guy's gonna continue to do this. Couple receptions, decent amount of yards, and some touchdowns. So I'll pass it off to Steve to talk about whoever he wants.
I don't want to talk on Kittle because he's Kittle. 15 receptions, just absolutely dominant. Who gets it? It's a tight end who gets 15 receptions. I just think that's crazy. I don't want to talk on any of these guys. They're all scrubs. Oh, man. Okay, we'll go Dalton Schultz. And I'm still not high on him. I think that he got thrust into a position with God, who's their tight end that got hurt?
Oh goodness.
Why can't I remember this?
Oh goodness, I don't remember, but it was bad. It was.
Blake Jarwin. It was Blake.
There we go.
Okay, I think he got thrust into a spot with Jarwin going out, and I honestly I've watched quite a bit of the Cowboys play because I am a Amari Cooper and Dak owner in many leagues, and I just don't like this guy I think he's just in the right spot right now, and I think you're not going to see much from him in the future. So I think you sell him as high as possible right now. That's my tip to you guys. Sell Dalton Schultz as high as you can right now. Colin?
I don't really want to talk about anyone either. I'm just going to leave it. We don't have to talk about this.
Right.
It's tight ends. We kind of touched on Howard earlier, how he's been kind of a thing, and then he got injured. We already know George Kittle's going to just dominate. Tanya, I mean, he's came out of nowhere just kind of like Schultz, and then Mark Andrews, obviously. Mike called him out, and he dominated. So let's just do a quick review, and let's jump into that buy, sells, and drops. So it's time for that rule of 3. We got the drops, the buys, and the sells. So we're going to start with some buy highs. Mike, you kick it off.
My buy low is the guy that I've been raving about all offseason, and it is Preston Williams. I know you're going to look at him and see that he's basically done absolutely nothing. But there was a story to come out that the offensive coordinator, Chan Gailey, who loves to throw the ball, evident by Ryan Fitzpatrick, just chucking the ball up, wants to involve Williams more. Now, he is getting off an ACL tear, so he is starting to get his legs under him. He does look pretty decent, and I think that if someone is kind of tilting and, is thinking that maybe this guy stinks, or maybe they dropped him, if you're lucky and you can get him for free, but maybe throw an offer out there, try to get Preston Williams on either a season long or a dynasty team, and I think that it'll do you wonders. And I'll throw it to Steve for his guy.
My buy low is Dan Arnold.
Oh baby!
No, it's actually Chris Godwin, and this is just due to the injuries that he's sustained so far this year. He's missed 2 full games already, and he's as of right now probably set to miss a third. He's still not practicing this week, so I'm saying grab Godwin. Obviously, he's not going to be free, but I think you can get him for a discount because when he comes back, he is going to dominate for the Bucs. You saw in the 2 games that he has played so far this year, he's put up pretty respectful numbers, and that's him with no offseason, no preseason, and just jumping in, and that's probably why he got the injuries. But I think when he comes back healthy, he's just going to dominate. Colin?
So my guy is DJ Moore. Now, the reason I have DJ Moore as my buy low candidate is because he hasn't really produced besides week 2, and even then he didn't get a touchdown, so it was kind of tough to really, contribute offensively that much. He had 7.4 points week 1, 16 in week 2, 7.5 in week 3, and 6.9 in half PPR. In week 2, he had 8 catches for 120 yards. That was his big blowout week. But last week, he had 4 catches for 6 targets for 49 yards. And it was kind of just like 74% of snap percentage when he was getting basically 90% the first 3 weeks. So he's getting lower. He looks, irrelevant to a certain extent. Not a wide receiver 1, not a wide receiver 2 at this point. But the good side of DJ Moore is this week he's playing the Atlanta Falcons, which, as everyone knows, their defense is terrible, and he should have at least a fantasy relevant week. He should be able to maybe get into the end zone finally for his first touchdown this season, and also just put up maybe another 100-yard week. So, and then on top of that, he plays them again 3 weeks after that. So the next 2 out of the next 4 weeks, DJ Moore plays the Atlanta Falcons defense, he will have dominant weeks, and he should be able to get back up into a top 10 receiver with those, at least in those 2 weeks. So that's my buy low. I think he's someone that people are looking down on because they drafted him so high and they're looking to probably move him.
Hey,
So
Colin,
moving on. Yep.
I got something to add to that. So DJ Moore, he leads the league in air yards, which if people don't know what that is, that's honestly the amount of yards that the ball travels through the air when a QB passes them. And normally that correlates to high fantasy points. If you look at the top air yards in the league, it's basically the top 5 receivers minus DJ Moore. And he also leads the league in receiving yards without a touchdown. He's basically like what Robert Woods was last year. That's DJ Moore this year. So it's an easy buy low. I think he will get in the end zone and absolutely just go off. So you can go on to your sells if you want.
Yeah, so Mike, actually just continue talking because it's your turn.
All right.
Turn
All right, so my sell high is going to be Josh Kelly. Now for redraft leagues, maybe not. Maybe people don't listen to the podcast and haven't picked him up yet, but he is rostered in a fair bit of leagues, I believe. But this is more of a dynasty because I think Josh Kelly is just a guy. He's there. He doesn't look all that impressive, to be totally honest. Like he can find the holes and he runs through them. He's just another guy, and when Eckler comes back, he's gonna go back to being the second running back. And if you can sell him high right now, go ahead. But Steve, your guy.
So just to bring up Josh Kelly, Mike, do you start Kelly while Eckler is out for a couple weeks, see if he blows up, and then try to get as much as you can for him with like 1 or 2 weeks left of Eckler being out? Or are you trying to sell him high now, expecting him to break out?
I think it really just depends on what you're going to get, honestly. If someone reads into the hype and thinks that he is unreal and gives you a good package for him, take it. If you have to wait a couple weeks and then someone comes calling, take it. Like I will. It all depends on selling on hype, if people buy into hype or if people buy into actual performances.
No, I agree. I definitely agree with the selling of him. And I think he's a good running back, but I don't think he's a great running back. But yeah, I think you keep him for, if you have him rostered right now, you keep him for 2 weeks. And I think you're going to see him pop off in one of those 2 weeks. And then that's when you sell him high, because right now there really is no, like, what did he do last game? I actually don't have his stats in front of me. If he had a good game last game, which he very well could have, then yeah, go ahead. But
he scored 2.8 points. He had 9 carries for 7 yards, 3 catches for 26. Just a guy.
Yeah, so I say wait for him to blow up and then try to sell him. My guy is Melvin Gordon, and he's been pretty good this year. 14, 16, 7, and then 25 fantasy points. So he's been fairly good this year, but that's mostly without Philip Lindsay in the lineup. And when Lindsay comes back, I think you're going to see, obviously, his snaps are going to go down. He was on the field roughly around 70% of the time without Philip Lindsay there. So I think when Phil comes back, you're going to see his snaps go down. He's still going to be the red zone guy, and he's still going to be fantasy relevant. But I don't think you're going to see him be. He's right now. He's the 11th ranked running back in the league for fantasy, and I don't think you're going to see that end of season. I think you're going to see him drop quite a bit. Colin?
Yeah, so my guy to sell high on is OBJ. Right now, he is the wide receiver 5 in standard and wide receiver 10 in PPR, but that basically accounts for what he did this past week against the Dallas Cowboys. He had 35.9 points in half PPR leagues. He had 8 targets for 5 receptions, 81 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 attempts rushing, 73 yards and a touchdown. So you can look at that week and be like, wow, this guy's so good. And then you could look at his Cincinnati week and be like, wow, he's pretty decent. He had 15.4 points in half PPR. But against Washington and Baltimore, he accounted for like 11 points total between the 2 weeks. I think this is the type of player that's going to have weeks where, yeah, he pops off and he wins you a week because he's OBJ and he has the talent. But fantasy-wise, I don't think he's consistent enough in that run-heavy offense that the Browns have that he's going to continue to have fantasy value week in and week out. And just looking at his next couple of matchups, he's got Indianapolis and then he got the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I just don't think they're going to be very fantasy relevant weeks. But then he goes back to Cincinnati on the 7th week of the season, which again, he'll probably have a successful week and probably get a touchdown. So I think you just look at he's a week-to-week start, but obviously with the name, you have to start him. So just with the name alone, you could probably sell him on that and get him for something that could actually help you consistently, because he's not going to be consistently helping you. And he even said that in a quote. He said, it's probably not going to be a year where I, blow up and put up like 1,600 yards. And that's fine. Like he'll probably still amount for over 1,000 yards this year, but it won't be like a fantasy relevant 1,000 yards or touchdown production. So yeah, that's why I'd sell high now before, you see what he does in week 5 and week 6 against 2 pretty strong defenses.
Colin.
Yeah.
DJ Moore, OBJ, end of season, who finishes higher?
I think I want to say DJ Moore, but OBJ could have a couple more weeks like this and push himself into a top 10 or like around that area.
So right now you would say if you have OBJ and you could get DJ Moore and a second round pick, would you do that deal? Would you take the Moore in the second round pick?
DJ Moore in a second round pick for OBJ?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would take that.
Okay. I agree with that. I think OBJ is going to be great this year, but I think you're going to see his Amari Cooper like season where he puts up 20 points, 5 points, 20 points, 5 points. So I agree with you. Let's move on to drops.
Mike, that's all you.
The guy that I'm dropping is a guy that everyone picked up after his blow-up game in week 3, and that's Jeff Wilson. This guy faded into oblivion. Last game, he played 8% of snaps. He had 3 rushes for 6 yards. He had 1 target, 1 reception for 13 yards. He got outplayed by Jerick McKinnon, and I mean, that's really all I can say with that. I'm going to go on to Steve.
Yeah, Jeff Wilson. I was one of the losers that picked him up. I'm pretty sure I got him for free, but yeah, it was not nice. My drop is AJ Green. I think that AJ Green is a very talented wide receiver, but I think there are too many mouths to feed on the Bengals right now, and he's not the number 1 target for Joey B there. So I think you're going to see games where he's okay, but I think he's going to be a wasted roster spot because he's not startable, and I wouldn't want to flex him any week. So I think he's going to hurt you more just by sitting on your bench and you looking at him than anything else. Colin?
My guy is Jordan Howard. And now if you have not dropped him yet, you probably should. He is the RB 48 in standard and 54 in PPR right now. In half PPR formats, he is amounted for a total of like 18 points in 3-4 weeks. So he's been touchdown dependent. He has gotten less than 15% of snaps in each weeks. And he's gotten the most amount of attempts at rushing he had was 8, and it was in week 1, and he had 7 yards in those 8 attempts. He has been basically around a yard per carry, if that, through 4 weeks. And yeah, it's Gaskin season, and Breida, it's just too many guys in that backfield, but Gaskin is the guy that they're going with, and it's time to put Jordan Howard away for good, because I don't think he's going to amount to anything, at least in a Miami uniform.
What would you put Gaskin's value at in, say, a dynasty league?
Ooh, that's a good one, because I just traded James Robinson for a first. I think we did that a couple podcasts ago, and I was talking on the pod about it. Gaskin right now, it's kind of tough. I wouldn't say a first round pick in a dynasty, but I think you would probably get a second for fun. I would just hold on him if that was the case because I feel like he eventually could potentially, be worth a first. But as of right now, he's probably worth like a second at most.
Sounds good. So shout out to Jim.
Mike traded Gaskin for a first.
I did give a third,
there you go.
but
Yeah, it was
I mean,
Gaskin and a third for a first.
and one part of that deal was the new owner of Gaskin wanted a great tasting, less filling Miller Lite with the trades, which I'm okay with.
Not a sponsor.
Not a sponsor, but it is great tasting, less filling, only 96 calories. Let's go.
All right, so let's jump into that waiver wired. So what we have written down right now is the Ernest Johnson, the Cleveland Brown running back, who is like 1% owned right now. Basically, the Browns amount to like 2,000 rushing yards a season, or 200 rushing yards a game right now. Like that's their average. So I don't think Kareem Hunt's going to get all 200 yards. So I think this guy might have potential, and he showed some of it against the Cowboys, almost getting 100 yards on the ground on like 8 attempts. So he was pretty gross. Number 2, Tim Patrick. Number 3, Damian Harris. Number 4, Robert Tonyan. Number 5, Dalton Schultz. Number 6, David Moore. Number 7, Alshon Jeffrey. Number 8, Damir Bird. I think there's a few more that I saw, but Mike, if you want to talk on them while I look up these other guys, go ahead.
I have one that could be a stash because he's the Bears wide receiver 2, and that's Darnell Mooney. This guy is a boomer bust guy. He's ridiculously fast. I think he ran like a 4.3 or a 4.2 possibly at the combine. Now he does have Nick Foles throwing him the ball, so I mean take it with a grain of salt, but there's a lot of guys out there that could do some work for you. I mean, realistically, the only big one I see is the Ernest Johnson, and that's because he looked good. Couple tight ends, but if you're getting a tight end off the waiver wire, you're streaming, so you're just basically looking for matchups. But Steve, you got any guys?
Yeah, so I threw on Alshon and Damir Bird. I think Alshon right now, pretty much, unless you're in a deep league, he really isn't rostered because he was missing the first couple games. And I think he's going to come back to a team that, well, Wentz, who loves to target him to begin with, but a team that is lacking wide receivers. So I really like Alshon. It's going to be a tough couple matchups, so you could always wait to pick him up. You don't have to grab him now. He plays against Pittsburgh, yuck. Baltimore, yuck. But I mean, it gets a little easier. He plays against the Giants and then Dallas. So I think he could be a good stash. Grab him you could grab him this week or next week probably. And then I also added Damir Bird. He's been quietly having a decent season with New England. He put up 80 yards last game, 10 targets. And he put up in week 2, he put up 72 yards, 9 targets. So, he's quietly having a pretty good year, pretty solid year. Somebody that I didn't really expect. I think he could be a stash for upcoming weeks too. So, Alshon and Damir Bird. Colin?
Yeah, so the guys I was looking for, I found them. DJ Dallas, 1% owned. D'Ernest already said. Keyshawn Vaughn, 3.8% owned. You guys, we haven't talked about this today, but Fournette's probably ruled out for Thursday Night Football, they're saying, and he looked kind of decent in his first official game.
No, he didn't.
He got a touchdown.
Yeah, but he didn't look good.
No, he looked like trash. He just got he literally he basically rolled out and Brady threw him the ball because there was nobody near him.
He had a pretty bad drop.
You could be trash, but you could still have fantasy relevance, as we've seen with Fournette. But he's there at 3.8%, just in case anyone is interested. Isaiah Ford, 1% owned. He's looked pretty decent for Miami here and there. T. Higgins, 13.3% owned. We're talking just random like redraft or, a keeper potentially. You could buy low even if it was a dynasty. So, but he's been pretty sick the last couple of weeks, and I think he's going to obviously be the guy with Burrow moving forward at some point. Scotty Miller, 11.7% owned, but obviously like he's might be injured, but he looked good in Sunday's matchup as well. Caught like 8 passes. And Cameron Brate, Steven brought up 1% owned, which now that OJ's out, he probably will get into the end zone, as Steven said earlier. But the guy I'm going to pick is probably Ernest Johnson. Chubb's injury, Hunt potentially being a little injured still. They looked like they could trust him. They used him a bunch, and he, like I said, almost 100 yards on the ground against a pretty shitty defense in the Cowboys. But that being said, like he's an interesting player. I would actually consider picking him up this week myself just to see what he can do. I'm not going to play him, but maybe he could squeeze into like a flex role or an RB2 range if Hunt and Chubb could both be relevant. Why not Ernest Johnson? He's been a feel good story too. He was undrafted, and I think he played for like the AFL for like half a year before they got disbanded. So good for him. Hopefully he continues to roll and learn from Hunt as the second guy. Do you guys have anything else you want to talk about before we close out the show?
I got one thing, and as everyone knows, we were allowed to play small town strip clubs music, so I thought I'd do them a favor. They have a new song coming out this Friday, so basically Thursday night at midnight, and it's called "Hey Shitty." If it's basically about small town, drinking with your buddy named Shitty. If you're from a small town, usually there's one. Just pre-save it. You can find the information on their Facebook page, and hashtag not an ad. So Steve.
Small town strip club, baby. Let's get it. We've had Jack on here before. Plays guitar for Small Town Strip Club. They're a great band. Listen to them.
All right, let's close it out. So thanks to everyone listening. Follow our Instagram at Day1Football, our Twitter at Day1Football as always. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, and also subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. We'd really appreciate it. It's on Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you want to really listen to your podcast. We have it most likely on there. So again, thanks for everything, guys, and have a great day.
There's been some definition of insanity. And if you go back to the same spot